Welcome to Aware. We are dedicated to communicating information that inspires your positive growth and change. Are you interested in a peaceful planet? Are you interested in optimal health? Are you living with purpose? Are you enjoying your life? We realize each person can make a difference, and our mission is to empower your awareness. The choices that you make in every moment shape your life, and we encourage you to realize that you have your own answers and to always listen to your own truth. We invite you to stay aware.
Hello and welcome to The Aware Show. I am Lisa Garr, and it's such a joy and an honor to be here with you today. By the way, if you miss any part of this broadcast, or if you want to share it with a friend, you can always listen to The Aware Show podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And that's really fun because when you hear something that you love, you can just share it right away from any podcast platform. And also, I just want to mention that our guest today we were brought together by a very, very dear friend of ours in Wayne Dyer. And Wayne really had such an instrumental part that he played in both of our lives because he was fascinated with near-death experiences. And he always used to ask me, what's it like on the other side? What's it like? And he always used to ask Anita Moorjani the same thing. And he was so curious about her story that he sought her out to talk about it. And she wrote a book called Dying to Be Me. It is an incredible story about her 4-year battle with cancer and how she fell into a coma during that battle. And she had, during that time, a near-death experience, an experience where she got to really return to this source of absolute pure love in her life. And I recognize that experience because that's the same thing that happened to me when I went through my near-death experiences. I went to a place where there was seamless, boundaryless connectedness. And that is one of the things that I see in Anita Moorjani every time that I talk with her. I see Wayne in her, and I see that seamless, boundaryless source of love that connects all of us. So welcome, Anita. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Lisa. We always have so much fun when we speak. I miss it. I actually miss it.
We do. We connect on so many different levels. It's not just the interviewer author thing. It's many different levels. When you speak with someone who's been through a near-death experience, which I don't recognize. I mean, I don't recommend anybody goes and knocks themselves out or goes into a coma to have this. It's accessible to anyone. But I'd love it if you could take us back to that feeling that you remember when you really chose to return and not die. Could you take us back there?
Yeah, it was a feeling of absolute clarity where I understood why I existed here. I understood the purpose of my life, why my soul had chosen to incarnate in this particular life, in these particular circumstances. I understood why I was sick. And the thing is, the clarity was so incredible that I realized, up until that point, up until the time I had the NDE, I had believed, like most people do, that when you get sick, when you get cancer, when you get these things, you're basically a victim of your disease and you think this happened to me. In that state of clarity, I realized I did this to me. And that is what really, helped me to make my decision to come back because at first, no part of me wanted to come back. I thought, why would I come back? It was a dying body and I was suffering and everyone around me was suffering because I was dying. But then in that state of clarity, it was like, oh, I did it to me. And now I understand how I did it to me. And now I'm getting an opportunity to undo it. And so I agreed to come back.
That would be the hardest thing to tell anyone in that state of tumors throughout the whole body and, weeks, days away from death's door, to tell them you did this to you.
It's very hard. I can't say it. I can only say it for myself that
Right.
I did it to me. But yet I know that in truth, illnesses, and we're not just talking about cancer, but many chronic illnesses, they don't happen in a vacuum. They happen because of a whole string of things. And it's not conscious, but a whole string, chain of events of things that we initiate and we do to ourselves and we propagate it. And we do it unconsciously. And so I don't like people to feel it's their fault they got ill. This is not an accusation, but it's more like going into a journey of awareness of how did I come to this point and how can I reverse it? What were the things I did? Because what leads to something like this, like an illness like this, it's not purely physical. When we go to a doctor, they're just treating the physical symptoms. These things happen. Our bodies and our cells start to break down for a multitude of reasons, many of which we have control over. And a huge part of it is our emotions. It's also the patterns we've developed from past trauma, from our upbringing. There's just so much to it. It's also not knowing what our soul's purpose or journey is, and so not honoring that because we don't know it. And for most of us, our education, our upbringing is not conducive to finding all this out. And so I found this out in a near-death experience, but not everybody gets to have one, and nor do I recommend they have one, as you also suggested, which is why I share what I know with anyone who will listen.
I really think, and when did this happen, by the way? This was
in 2006, so it's a long time ago now, 16 years.
But not that long ago. And in that time of the 16-year period, what you just said about the cancer journey being psychological, emotional, physical, environmental is more widely accepted now than it ever has been, especially in the last 15, 16 years. And that's not a very long time if you think about it. And I'm really grateful for what you said because it makes sense.
Yeah, and when I understood it at that time, 16 years ago, less people were open to it than they are today. Far less people were open to it. And
I find interesting because it wasn't really that long ago. We have come a long way in the past 15 years. But let me actually ask you about that time where it wasn't widely accepted. When you came out of that experience and you had this epiphany and you shared it with people, how did that go?
Not very well. That's the problem. That's why I said not many people were open to it at that time. And even today, it really depends on the circles you hang out with. Today, it's easier to find circles and people who are really open to this, but there are still people who are very entrenched in a very academic way of looking at things. So, but definitely easier today. So at that time when I tried to share, I was told that I was unrealistic, I was delusional, that because what I started to share was how my life up to that point had contributed to me getting that sick. But people preferred to think that that it was that I had a spontaneous remission and science can't explain it yet, and I was really lucky and I had good doctors. The funny thing was, the explanation of the good doctors and the medicine, all those things didn't work for me for the first 4 years. It was only after the NDE that the healing became completely rapid.
And just to share a little bit about your upbringing with our audience, you were raised in a traditional Indian family.
Yes.
And in a prearranged marriage situation, right?
Yes, I was encouraged to have an arranged marriage. They don't force you, but they encourage you. But because everybody else around you is doing that, if you don't go for it, there's a lot of pressure, put it that way. They don't force you. Mm-hmm. There's cultural pressure, peer pressure, where you can say no, but you kind of feel abnormal if you do. You feel like you don't fit in and you're doing something wrong, or that there's something wrong with you. It's that sort of feeling. And when you're introduced to a guy, And if everybody around you, your community, your parents, your family, they all feel that he is the perfect person for you because he's got everything from their perspective, everything matches, but you're kind of like, ooh, this arranged thing doesn't quite work for me. And if I'm the one who says no, then there's a little bit of pressure, like they ask you, what do you think of him? But if I say, oh, he's not my type, they kind of go, oh, you're really choosy. Other men won't come forward and meet you if you say no to a good catch like this. So you get kind of pinned to a corner where damned if you do, damned if you don't.
And what about anything you want to do, like get an education, pursue a career, anything like that? Where's the permission for that?
Yeah, it's not encouraged at all. So you can push and do it, but again, you're made to feel that you will be less desirable for marriage and for men. The smarter you are, the more independent you are, the more you travel, the more, if you want a career and you want to earn your own money. And parents will actually say, you can do it, but remember when you get married, you'll have to ask your husband's permission. If the family you're marrying into don't want that, if they're against it, then you'll have to stop. So basically, you can't get serious about a career. When women worked, at least in the time when I was growing up and when I was in my 20s, when women worked, it was called a pastime. It was just to pass the time until you got married. Oh. You were discouraged from getting a real serious career or having real higher education because, the decision as to whether you'd be allowed to continue lay with the husband, the future husband, and his family.
I'm sure a certain amount of that still exists. Is that true? I mean, we're so progressive in the Western world, but does that still exist in Indian cultures and various cultures around the world?
Oh, absolutely. In many cultures, it still exists. And even in the progressive cultures. So I've been very blessed in that I went to a British school and now I live in the United States. So I see my own thinking is very westernized, and I'm somebody who will do anything for freedom, basically freedom to be who we are, to be authentic.
You kind of came in that way though, Anita.
I did. I came in that way. But sometimes when I'm speaking to Indian people who who come across as being very progressive, but because they grew up in a culture that wasn't, they believe they've broken through, but I can see the nuances in their languaging. And I'll give you an example. Like I was speaking to a woman who seemed very progressive, but she said, I'm very lucky that my husband allows me to do these things. So immediately in the language, it's like, okay, you still need your husband's permission to be yourself and to do the things, to follow your own passion.
It's a entirely different experience when you break that mold and go the absolute opposite direction. It's almost like you have to go 100% the opposite direction. You can't straddle the fence at all.
You can't. You really can't. And which is what I did, and was completely ostracized from the Indian community.
That, looking back, must have felt like knives and daggers, because you're several books later
now, but
several books later, the latest book is called Sensitive is the New Strong, and you probably didn't even know that you were as sensitive as it's okay to be back then.
Yes. And the thing is, I realized that I've always been really sensitive. And I think it's my sensitivity that found it really hard to mold myself into something that I'm not authentically, that I am. Yeah, basically to mold myself into a culture that didn't feel like it fit me.
Where else does this show up in your life, Anita, where there is inside of you almost like a steel rod, knowing you as well as I do, that's unyielding on certain things, that you just unwaveringly, that intuition will not allow you to do anything different, in a way that's a strength. I mean, it's a strong strength of yours. And then there's this very sensitive person on the outer shell of you that's very permeable and very affected by, people's opinions and language, and just as you should be. I love this, that you're identifying this personality type of yours. Do you find many people like that? Like the eggshell is really permeable on the outside, but there's a strength inside of you that is unwavering.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, so yeah, thank you for that description. It's a really good, for me, it's really good to hear that because it tells me more about me. And I don't know, so I'm trying to think if I know people like that. And when I look at myself, I see that I genuinely do care about people. Like I really, really do. And the closer the people are to me, like if they're part of my family, they're part of my inner circle, my tribe, my team, I genuinely care about them. So I am sensitive to their needs. And then in the general public, when people follow me and when they feel that what I'm talking about is helping them, when people write and say, oh my gosh, your book saved my life and I went through cancer, I genuinely care and love these people and feel for them. And I love the fact that I've been able to help them. So that's a real feeling. But at the same time, what I'm seeing is that the reason these people are having the issues they're having and the reason that they're getting sick is because the world throws a message at them that's not conducive for them to live a strong, healthy, happy life. And that's where I get like an iron rod. It's like, no, that's not the truth. The truth, what you are being given, that's being portrayed as the truth, is actually not true. It's an illusion. I saw the truth when I was on the other side. That's what the feeling is inside me all the time. It's like, you don't have to be sick. You don't have to be poor and derelict, and you don't have to be downtrodden and a doormat. You really don't. But you have been conditioned to believe you do, and that's the illusion. I was conditioned so many things, and all those things that I was conditioned to believe is what caused the cancer. And that's why I have this steel rod, because I never want to go back to having that serious terminal cancer.
Yes.
Yeah.
You must see it all the time where people that are naturally very extremely sensitive, and by sensitive, I mean intuitive and listen to a higher power and very in touch with themselves. But there's that denial of that, or maybe the boundaries get blurred. And that's maybe why it develops into more of a sickness, because it's so against the grain of who you are. How could you suggest to people who experience life that way, sensitively, very highly intuitive, maybe in touch with nature or even a higher power than themselves, how do you set boundaries?
So I would say it's not even a case of setting boundaries to begin with. So let's understand what it is that's going on within the person. When you have somebody who's highly intuitive, highly sensitive, what happens is that when you're highly sensitive and highly empathic, you're absorbing, like you read energies, you are intuitive, but you're intuitive to all the energies that are around you here in the physical plane. That means all the people that are around you, all the messages you're getting, your upbringing, your family, your friends, your peers, and also the community you're in. So you're sensitive to all of this, but you're also sensitive and very in tune to your higher self, your soul, your soul's purpose. You're sensitive to a higher, let's say a higher being, your deceased loved ones, the messages that are coming to you from the other side. Mm-hmm. So you're sensitive to all of that as well as all of this. So the people who are less sensitive, I believe, in fact, are less likely to get as affected in a negative way. In fact, it's the sensitive people, which is why, I share the message I do. It's for sensitive people. Number one is to become aware, acknowledge, and accept that I am highly sensitive. I absorb energies around me and they affect me. the energies of the physical world as well as the energies of the non-physical world. So you've got two worlds. So that's number two. Number one is acknowledge I'm sensitive. Number two is to acknowledge that there are basically two realms. Now, when you go deeper, you'll realize that it's a continuum. There isn't an actual dividing line, but let's, for the sake of conversation and semantics, you are in touch with two realms, this one and the other one simultaneously. That's what a sensitive, empathic person is doing all the time. And what they don't realize, and so number two is to be aware that you're absorbing energies from both sides. Number three is the reason that your life doesn't work for you is because you are allowing yourself to be taken over and you are listening to the message of this realm more than the other realm. So in other words, pleasing the physical people around you, giving them what they want, that is mattering more to you than what the spiritual messages and your higher self is telling you is your purpose and the reason for you coming here. So you are quietening that because it's displeasing the people here if you follow that. So as you suppress that higher voice more and more and listen to the noise from here more and more, that's when your energy becomes more depleted, and that's when problems start to occur. So this goes way beyond boundaries.
Yes, I can see that. It makes more sense for you to describe this because that's the life that you lived. You lived that life where the outside influences were directing your future. Yes. And there was something inside of you saying, no, this is not what I want. This is not for me. I find it so beautiful because the three books that I know that you've written, the Dying to Be Me, that describes your near-death experience, and the one that you have now, that Sensitive is the New Strong, describes, there's one in the middle that was, what if this is heaven?
What if this is heaven? Yes.
And you describe that really bridges the gap between the two, because you're talking about this heaven that exists. You call it whatever you want to call it, other realm, a reality, awareness of all that is connected. You could call whatever you want to call it. But as you said, the more you get in touch with the fact that there is something greater than just us going on in this world, and when you really tap into the universal energy that is omnipresent, always there, when you tap into it, you start to see the magic of it. And you see that you can operate in so much more flow and so much more accordance with the universe and all that it is. All of the crises or opportunities, all of the breakdowns or breakthroughs, they're challenging at the time, but they always offer opportunities. And some of them, don't.
Yeah.
I must say that. Yeah. Some of them are just,
that happens too.
Yeah, it does. It does. But it's a wonderful way of describing the reality of what exists. Is when you deny this truth of yourself, it can turn your cells off. It can create illness, disease, and horrible relationships. And then when you actually realize the connectedness of all things, it can start to change the way that you live. That's basically what you're saying, right?
Yes, it is. And when you are willing to turn off the noise of this physical world and make your primary source of information your own higher self or your connection to the higher self. And it can be whatever works for you. Like you can think of it as your soul. You can think of it as God. You can think of it as angels, spiritual beings, whatever it is. But when you tune into your own higher guidance system and take that as your primary truth, and then as a secondary, you're dealing with the physical world and the people in it. When you can do it that way around, it works a lot better than when you take all your guidance from the physical world.
Right. Now, if someone were to know or recognize that they were empathic and sensitive, is there a difference between being sensitive and maybe having empathy or compassion, or is it the same thing?
So there's different levels. So each word has a slightly different connotation. And then there's a term that we've been using a lot lately, which is empath, full-blown empath. So usually when somebody describes an empath, an empath is somebody who actually takes on the energies and the emotions of the people they're speaking to or the people around them. Empathy, so somebody who's sensitive doesn't necessarily have to be sensitive to other people. They can be sensitive to the environment, to foods, to chemicals, to fabrics. So the word sensitive is broadly used in that sense. But when somebody has a tremendous amount of sensitivity and empathy and compassion, that means they actually feel other people around them. So that makes them a much more sensitive person. But I think of it as a sliding scale, and all of us fall somewhere on this sliding scale. And some of us have less of this empathy, compassion, sensitivity. Some of us have less, and some of us have more. And the more that you have, the more full on you are, where you're really feeling the energies of the people around you, and it's interfering with your connection with the other side, but you're aware there is another side, then the more you need to be aware of tools on how to take care of yourself.
Right.
The less you are on that scale, the lower you are on that scale, the less you're even aware of guidance from the other side. And so that doesn't interfere at all. Basically, you're very much entrenched in this physical world. So the lower they are on sensitivity, because sensitivity also means being sensitive to the other realm and guidance and messages and things like that.
I find I love this conversation because of the nuances. And I also know you have quite an affinity with your online audience, or with communicating and connecting with your audience on social media, right?
Yes, I do.
So tell me, how do you deal with haters? How do you deal with people that come in to discredit? How do you deal with that? And this is just probably going to be great advice for anyone who's ever had to deal with,
Yeah.
negativity.
So it's not always been easier, and I have to say it's gotten easier, a lot easier for me in the last year or so. I've gotten so much better at it, and now when I see a negative comment, it doesn't even affect me anymore.
Wow.
And what's super interesting is that in recent times, what I've noticed is as soon as it stopped affecting me, I didn't even have to go in and respond. What would happen is my own audience, my own followers would actually respond to that person and say, like, are you having a bad day, or you've got her wrong, or why are you here? And I wouldn't even need to go in and say anything or justify myself. But going back to, let's say, a year or more ago, I did used to struggle. And there are two things I struggled with. And the second thing I still struggle with a little bit. So the first thing was just generally haters. And what changed me was that I think I had an epiphany one day when I saw that there was one person who was a hater, and I just ignored them, but I kept doing what I did, but I couldn't help allowing it to affect me. And I would think, why are they doing that? So first I want to actually backtrack a little bit more. When I used to have haters, I started to cater to the haters because you want to please them. That's the default. It's like, oh my gosh, these people are displeased with what I'm doing. And so I would change what I was delivering. Here's what I noticed.
One person, one or two people. Wow.
One or two people, even though 98% of the people are on board with what you're saying. But you have these one or two haters that are at you.
So weird the brain does this. Yes.
Yeah. I know. You focus on that. And then in my next video, I'm like in my own mind thinking, okay, am I going to trigger that hater? Am I going to trigger? The brain does this.
Yeah.
And thank God I've stopped doing that at least for a year or more. But what I started to notice when I used to do this is going back at least 3 or 4 years, is that I was not being authentic. And because I was using language that caters to debunkers, what happened is I was attracting more debunkers and haters.
Wow.
Because you're actually appealing to their sensibilities because you're now catering to them.
Oh,
so
that
I
makes
was
sense.
attracting more. And so when I realized what was going on, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm doing. And so I had this epiphany, is to speak as if everybody loves me, just to speak as if I'm speaking to myself or to somebody who really needs to hear what I'm saying. And that's what I started doing. And I would advise this to anyone. It doesn't matter how many haters you have. Just speak as if you're speaking to you're speaking to somebody who really needs to hear what you're saying, and they're hanging on to every word you're saying. And speak that way. And I noticed that I started to get more passionate. I noticed I started to, because I was coming from my authentic self, I almost felt like I was channeling. In fact, not almost. I did feel I was channeling the messages, and I was really giving people what they needed to hear.
Yes,
And,
yes. And,
yeah.
you know, it gives permission for everyone to exist as well. The people that I was doing this call the other day with Marcy Shimoff about your year of miracles. The whole conversation was about miracles. And it was an audience of like 2,000 to 3,000 people that were from every single affiliate list around. And some of these people were in there saying, how dare you talk about miracles? And what is that anyway? And is it, you know, for the privileged? And then slowly but surely, I mean, I was watching Marcy, who's a master at this, and she is so inclusive about everyone having their own experience, no matter where their background is or where they come from or what their life experience is. She just kept moving forward. And I was looking at that going, wow, I'm watching Marcy really just hold the space and be super inclusive. And I was listening to my, you know, negativity bias going, oh, why is it focusing on this one particular person? And then I watched her and I was looking at that person. Then all of a sudden I saw the chat scroll with tons and tons of love for that person. And the audience took care of that person.
Yes.
Eventually, later on in the broadcast, that person was chiming in saying, well, maybe this is possible. And I was like, wow, it was so beautiful to witness that, you know, Marcy stayed her course and the audience took care of being inclusive of anyone's opinions or backgrounds or feelings. And that person shifted to a place of possibility. And it was like, that to me was beautiful.
That's really beautiful. That's so beautiful because that's what ended up happening to me. So one day I noticed a post on my Facebook feed from somebody who actually said under one of my videos, said that I actually used to be someone who used to post really negative comments to you. I'm so sorry I did that. I actually watched one of your videos from end to end, and you're just a really beautiful person, a beautiful human being. So that really touched me. I thought, okay, that's amazing. Now, I didn't even recognize this person's name. I didn't even remember that they used to post negative comments.
Yes, and I want everybody to understand, it's not from the place of Anita and I needing to be liked. It's from a place of possibility, of the message that that's coming through you, and messages coming through me are just about love, and they're about connectivity, and they're about connection and feeling like possibilities exist in your life and in the world. Has nothing to do with needing to be liked. It has to do with knowing what's available in the world, and that passion of wanting people to understand that this is available.
Yes,
right?
100%. And also the other thing is that at least now, when I get people who criticize me or write a negative comment, I actually read it, and this is really interesting. I started to notice it doesn't affect me emotionally at all, but I read it from a space of trying to understand, like, I wonder what I said to trigger that person, to see, did I say something that's not inclusive to everyone, or did I? And then I'll just ask my team, did I say something? And they'll say, no, you were great. It was fine. It's just them. And then I'll be like, okay, and I move on, because because
Right.
it doesn't affect me, yeah,
You can do
emotionally at
this.
all.
Here's a great exercise. If you're watching the news and if you see an opinion or a person that comes on or some devastating experience that happened, you can start to look at this, all of the news, with compassion, with understanding, with more love, with looking at the possibility of the human spirit within what's going on from any political view you might or might not agree with, from some of the very heinous acts that are being done to people on this planet, to continue to shower that with love and compassion and possibility, because it's going to happen to everyone. There's always going to be
Yes,
differing opinions. That's what makes us textured human beings, right?
exactly, exactly.
So how do you
And
watch the news? How do you deal with that?
I don't watch the news every day. I rarely watch the news. And I have to admit that. And so sometimes people may accuse me of not being in touch with the world and not caring enough as to what happens all over the world and to other people. And actually, my answer to that is not that I don't care enough. My problem is that I care too much. And when I do watch what's happening to people, and the thing that triggers me more than anything is injustice. Like, you can't control natural disasters and accidents and things like that. So I try not to watch stuff about accidents and things that happen like that. But when it comes to injustices, that that's something that I usually like to speak out about. But I that triggers me more than anything,
Mm-hmm.
especially even gender disparity and human rights, gay rights, all of it. So those are the kinds of things that interest me. But other than that, disasters and things like that, because I can't control them so much, I don't get in. Oh, and the one thing that I don't watch is politics,
It's, yeah.
political news, because
I'm
that's not really news. It's their opinion pieces, and usually people are super angry and opinionated, and
right.
it riles people up.
Right. I mean, I have such a hard time even ingesting the parts about, as you said, the injustices towards animals, towards children, towards
Yes,
underserved, this ridiculousness in Ukraine, all that's going on. But I also see that the world seems to be uniting more on
yes,
issues of injustice. And most of the movements that we've seen these days are all grassroots movements that are empowered, inspired by the people. From Me Too to Black Lives Matter to this, all of the environmental climate issues that are going on. A lot of these movements that are starting to now come to the forefront in a big way are all started by injustices that the people have risen up to fight against and to come together to find solutions for. And I love that. I love that. That's what I'm talking about, the human spirit.
yes. The
Have
human
faith in it.
spirit, yeah. The human spirit is actually, I mean, so powerful and so beautiful. So what I find works for me is that I don't allow myself to get sucked into the news. So to encapsulate how I deal with it is, I don't allow myself to get sucked into the news and everything that's happening all over the world, because with mainstream media and social media, we're getting news every second from all over the world, and we're not socialized to be able to handle that. We're not built that way. So this is something new for our species, to get bombarded with this. So I protect myself from all of that. But what I do is I consciously work at sending out energy to uplift the planet. I kind of, what I'm saying is, I don't want to absorb all that to bring me down, but I consciously want to send out positivity to help everything that's happening. So what I do frequently is I even bring people together as a group, or I even do a shout out on social media. Hey, everybody, join me. We're doing a global meditation, whether it's online or physically. Let's uplift the world. So what I want to do is I want to give something to the world, and I don't want to let the world suck my energy by me getting sucked into the dramas of the world.
That's great advice, because that's kind of the power of community, right?
Yes.
That it can be brought together like you do, with the intention of uplifting people or humanity or whatever it is. And whenever one or more are gathered, I feel it's so much stronger. That's written somewhere.
Yes. And we can send our intentions, we can do good things for the world. So even if we're going to go out and do good things and help people, we don't have to get sucked into the drama of all the bad things that are happening. So the key is understanding yourself. I know for me personally, getting sucked into all the bad things that are happening is really unhealthy for me. I can do more good things if I stay on the surface of the bad things and just focus on doing good things. Doing good things makes me happy. Getting sucked into the drama of the bad things depletes my energy.
That's well said from a very sensitive person, that it better serves your energy to stay with what's possible or the good things rather than to it.
Yes.
You're so sensitive to the negativity. It doesn't help you, so you can't help anybody else. And
Yeah.
yes, very, very well said. Do you have a tribe of sensitive people around you? And I hate to say that because it sounds a little bit like I'm stereotyping, but I'm not. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Okay.
So I definitely surround myself with a tribe of people we're like-minded, and everybody's on has a different way of being sensitive or a different level of sensitivity, but all of us understand each other. All of us, we don't judge each other. We love each other. We support each other. So I definitely do surround myself with a tribe of people. And interestingly, it's a community of friends I have, but I also feel that with a section of my audience, my followers, and also the little team I have supporting me in my work, who work with me on a daily basis. They also have that very similar mindset where we are all on the same wavelength, and they all understand my work and what I do and what my mission is, and we understand each other very well. So
Yes.
It's important for me to even work with people like that.
Great point. I mean, it's a great point for anyone who feels that when they're more aligned with the people around them, so much more gets accomplished, and it's done in such a more cohesive way. I understand that they're doing a movie about your experience. What message would you like to get across in a film about your life?
Okay, so first of all, it's like in a super duper early stage, so there's nothing out there yet, nothing announced. But if there is a movie made of my life story, so the most important thing for me is for the movie to because it's a story that I will be leaving behind, it'll be something that'll probably outlive me. The movie will probably exist longer than I will. But I want it to be a message that leaves the world a better place, for sure. I would want it to be a movie that actually inspires people, and for people to know that their bodies are amazing, magnificent, and they are amazing and magnificent and powerful creatures. And they are amazing beings. I would want people to know that their authenticity is the most important thing, that they are guided, they have a connection with the other side. Like, there's so many things I want them to know. And I would want the movie to be able to normalize conversations about the afterlife. I would want the movie to alleviate fear in people, fear of death, fear of being a victim of their illnesses, fear of what happens in the afterlife. I would want to alleviate all those fears, and I would want the movie to be able to help do that. So this is why, for me, if somebody makes a movie about my story, I would hate it if they took messages that I didn't resonate with just to sensationalize the movie, just to make money, just so that it sells more, even if it runs counter to some of the things that I'm trying to achieve. For me, it's not just a movie. It's something that I want to do to make the world a better place.
Right. I love that you said something so interesting there about normalizing conversations about the afterlife. Now, that is not something that you hear a lot of. Normalizing conversations about the afterlife. In what context do you mean? And
So
you're not
I
talking
want,
religious, right?
no, I want to alleviate the fear of that people have of the afterlife. So the thing is that I have nothing against religion per se, but what I do have something against is anybody or any belief system that instills fear in people, fear of the afterlife, because it's very damaging, because what it does is it inhibits your life. When you have this fear of the afterlife, it actually colors your physical life and how you live your life. And that's something I have a problem with. And that's why many people struggle and suffer with life, and they don't allow themselves to be authentic, and they judge themselves, and they judge themselves by something that they're told by a human who means well and is just trying to say, don't be an idiot. And so these are the things you have to do. But
Right, right. I mean, that could be the good message, is live an authentic life here and be compassionate and help other people so that you
yes.
don't go to this bad place.
Yes, but when your life is driven from a place of fear, that if I don't follow these rules, I'm going to go to the bad place, you make choices based on fear. You don't follow your heart. You don't make the idea is to make choices from a place of love. It's like, what would I love to do if I could do anything? What makes me feel passionate? And so it's basically, we have two choices at any point in time. Do we make our choices out of a fear of retribution, or fear of what we don't want? Or do we make our choices because this is what we love to do? This is what we want to do. This is what makes me want to wake up every day. And we make all our choices based on these two things, love or fear, whether we realize it or not. Even when you take a job, do you take a job because of your fear of not having enough money, or that a better one won't come along? Or are you taking this job because it's what I really want to do? It's taking me on my path to my end goal, and it's my calling. So even for some people, even marriage is like, am I getting married now because my body clock is ticking and I'm afraid a better partner won't come along?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes a
So
lot of
it's
sense.
like just about every choice we make is made from a fear, or if I make this choice, will it please these people? If I make this choice, will it anger them? If I make this choice, will it get me into heaven? Will it give me good karma? And can I give you an example from my own life?
Yes.
So, for example, when I was going through illness, debilitating illness, cancer, I was dying, my health was deteriorating. And somebody tells me that, oh, it's your karma. You have to do good work to alleviate your karma. And that's why you're deteriorating, because it's bad karma from a previous life. So immediately that instills even more fear in me. The whole reason that I had cancer was because I was making all my choices from a place of fear and not a place of love. A fear of disappointing people, a fear of disapproval, a fear of going against my religion, my culture, and so on. So now I had never done anything to follow my own passion. I grew up learning to see God in everyone else's eyes and serve everyone else. I was never taught to see God in my own eyes. And so the thing is, so here I was living this life of being a doormat for everyone else. And then I get told you're sick because you have bad karma. So the reason I got sick was because I had forsaken myself. So now with this new information, what do? I forsake myself even more and do more good work for people. That piece of advice ran totally counter to what I needed to hear.
Yes.
So if I was a spiritual guru, I would tell people, follow your heart. When you are told not to follow your heart, but there is a list of things you have to follow that some external person is giving you, the message that you're hearing inside is, my heart is not good. When who I am authentically is not good enough, I need to follow those standards. If I was a spiritual guru, I would tell people, don't be afraid to be all of who you are, because you are an expression of God. Your soul has come into this body to express itself and to be all that it can be. And if you don't honor that, what you're doing is you're denying that facet of God from expressing itself through you.
That makes an enormous amount of sense. It's just a great example, too, of how you shared that from your own experience of it driving you deeper to be going in the wrong direction. And yeah, that message of loving yourself isn't a popular one until you experience that you can't do anything else without that level of self-love.
Yes.
Yes. I know that you're speaking at the Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles in February. I think it's the 13th or the 10th through the 13th.
Yes.
Are you speaking on this particularly?
I will be speaking on this. I'll be doing a couple of events at the Conscious Life Expo. One of them, I'll be speaking, of course, on George Nouri's panel, but I'll also be doing one lecture on Sensitive is the New Strong, which will be speaking about sensitivity and the scale of sensitivity and being connected to both realms. And then another one, which I called A View from the Other Side, where I speak more about the perspective of being in the other realm and being able to see through the illusion of this physical and seeing what is actually real and what is what we've been indoctrinated to believe.
That is very, very interesting. Yes, from what you saw from that side. And speaking of that side, do you still hear from our friend Wayne Dyer?
I do, interestingly. Do you know, it feels like it's been less and less because I'm hearing from a lot of other people now, but he's still there. And I bet he's here now because he's like, I can just sense him right now saying, thank God you girls finally remembered.
Together, I know. I feel that it's been less and less as well. And I don't know if it's just that his soul or spirit has gotten detracted, or if it's really up to us as light workers that he empowered to continue on his messages and to live the messages of living in the light. So yes. I feel that he might be resting a little easier now because there's so many more people that are speaking that truth and speaking that message. And I'm really happy about that too.
Yeah, 100%. Like the only thing I feel from him nowadays is him giving me kudos or patting me on the back. Whereas previously I used to actually feel him guiding me, but now it's more like, you've got this, you've got this. So, and then just every now and then. But having said that, right now, I don't know why, I got the image of him saying something like, about time you brought me into this conversation.
I know. The last time, I will just have you know, the last time Anita and I got together and we were on an interview and we did not speak about our friend Wayne Dyer. The weirdest thing happened is this light kept coming through the blinds that were in front of you. And despite the fact that it was an hour-long interview and the light changed, that ray of light did not stop. You closed the blinds, the sun changed. It wasn't going to stop. So we finally acknowledged Wayne and we laughed about it.
Yep.
Well, so this time we get to, if anybody hasn't heard of the amazing Wayne Dyer, please check out his books. They're all about the power of intention. And he was one of the people that started saying, or I remember the most, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And his messages will continue timelessly on, despite his physical presence on this planet. And he inspired both Anita and I to be a continuation of his light and his work on this world, in this world as well. So we always want to give honor to our friend.
Yes, we do. And he definitely brought us together. So.
He did. He brought us together. And many of you as well. There's so many people that were touched by Wayne Dyer's life and by Anita's life, and people can find your information. What's the best way? I know that your website is your name.
Yes, my website is anitamoorjani.com. And of course, I'm on social media. I'm on YouTube, Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I do a lot of Instagram live videos. I also now have an online membership platform where people can feel immersed in, I call it a marinade of love and this other realm where we normalize the conversations that I was talking about.
Oh, fantastic. And what is that community called, or how do we find it?
It's called the Anita Moorjani Sanctuary. And you can go there either by typing anitamoorjanisanctuary.com or amsanctuary.com. Both of these addresses will take you there.
Okay. Well, that is a wonderful idea. Creating a tribe, a community
Yes.
of like-minded people that get to support each other and start from there and keep going.
Yes, exactly. And when they need to escape from all the noise of the outside world, they come into the sanctuary.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, thank you for all that you do and who you are, and providing a safe space for this conversation, which has really grown so much over the past 16 years. And I can't wait to see where it goes over the next 16 years. So thank you
Wow.
for who you're being, my friend.
Thank you for everything you do and for help sharing the messages. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, jump into Anita Moorjani's world. It's a wonderful one. And thank you all so much for being here today. You can always listen to this on our podcast, the Aware Show podcast, and you can share information from there as well, which is a great way to do it if you heard something that really lands with you. I am Lisa Garr, and until next time, I invite you to stay aware.